Hi, everybody. At Skating PJ here for three turn three for Skate Ontario with, wait, there's only Mazin. Mazin, where's Charlene?
Oh my goodness. Charlene is on a jet plane as we speak. She's on a
I know,
jet
lucky
plane
her.
to sun and fun in Miami, Florida, celebrating a girls' trip. So we are thinking of her. We're missing her. We're a little jealous, but you know
A
what?
lot jealous.
Yeah,
A lot jealous. Let's face
a lot
facts.
jealous. Exactly. I know. How are you?
I am well. And this is
Great.
going to be such a great episode because we're going to be talking about all things coaching. And Lord knows I was a coach, well, since before ice was invented. I know our two guests very well. One from the time he was a competitor, and my mom used to prejudge him in ice dance, to sort of help out. And the other one I coached with at my very first coaching job at the University Skating Club. And of course, you and I coached together. And what people don't know about coaching is that it's a very complex kind of job. So, talk to me a tiny bit about coaching, and then we're going to get into our Skate Ontario news and then into talking with our guests.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Sometimes you have to ask yourself the question, how did I get myself involved in this? I mean, you love the sport as a skater yourself. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, one day you are nurturing and coaching and managing and, producing young athletes to the best of their abilities. And before you know it, all of a sudden, the time flies. And, I will say this now, and I will also say it as we introduce our two guests. But I'm quite sure that between the four of us, we've got well over 100 years of coaching experience between the four of us, and that's
And
just
it only
phenomenal
feels
when
like
you
a
really.
thousand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. I know, yeah, but you know what? We'll soon get to them. Skate Ontario news. Let's do it.
Okay.
So last
Let,
week, of course,
yep.
was World Team Trophy being held in Japan, and the United States took away the gold medal for the team, and then South Korea was second, and then Japan was third. Canada ended up being able to, unfortunately, place sixth, okay, at the World Team Trophy. So it wasn't their best showing, but nonetheless, we had some new team members, to the event, and some of the athletes, had a little bit of struggle as they were, out there to compete. We in Skate Ontario had four competitors: Piper and Paul, Maddie Skizis, and Stephen Gogolev. And Maddie probably had one of her personal best skates for the short program, which was fantastic for her. Piper and Paul had two really great skates, and I think you would agree with me on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Stephen, you know what? Still kind of figuring out his footing under pressure, of course. Dealing with the fact that, yeah, I mean, as Charlene once said, the kid's grown like 10 feet, in such a short period of time. But you know what? Nonetheless, he tried his best in the free program and was able to do and successfully do, a couple of quad jumps. So good for him. Hopefully that he'll take that back home when he trains and, just be ready for next season.
Okay. Two thoughts. I will always be Team Piper and Paul, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier. As I've talked about in other places at other times, it actually doesn't matter what the results are. What matters is the fact that they have produced so many different programs that I will remember over time, and that's really the sort of important thing to consider here is that in 10 years' time, will I remember the results of the podium? No, not necessarily. And I said the same thing about Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, but I sure remember the performances and the creativity. I think that Skate Canada got it right when they mentioned in their press release post the event that this was an event for experience. So not only we talk about Stephen Gogolev, a young man with enormous talent. So not only is this an experience, but it's also building on the competitive experience that the skaters couldn't really gain over the last 3 years because of the pandemic. So we'll see what happens, but that's putting that Skate Ontario news where the team trophy is concerned to bed. So,
That
Mazin, there's something else that you wanted to talk about, I think, that just was happening last weekend.
Yeah, last weekend, Skate Ontario hosted their high performance athletes at the Nottawasaga Inn Skate Ontario supports the quest for gold. So these athletes were young athletes that competed at the pre-novice and novice level, and they competed at the challenge event. So they were all selected and invited to participate at the Nottawasaga Inn. And one of the things that they, were taught is media and how to speak, how to deal with. And I think that you can actually, maybe contribute a little bit to that because of your knowledge too with National Week, National Training Seminar Week as well. So what do you think? I think that's great.
I think it's amazing. I've done lots of media training over time for lots of athletes in different sports, not just skating. And it's one of the most valuable skills that you can give young people because young people believe that if a grown up asks them a question, then they have to answer. So, our job as media trainers is to help them to understand that they, just because a question is posed of them, they do not have to answer. And there are strategies for getting around it. So, and also just making them more comfortable because it's not always easy. So, couple of quick things. We will have on thin ice a little bit later on, and it's a coaching question. And if you want to get in on the chat, make sure that you leave your questions or comments in the comment window below, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible. Okay, Mazin, take it away. This is your show, my friend. Coaching, coaching, coaching.
My show. That's right. Listen, we, PJ and I, and our absentee, member Charlene is very happy to welcome, two great people, two great coaches here in Skate Ontario. David is the director or co-owner of the Mariposa Skating School, and Colleen Melanson, the convener of the provincial level skating out of the Milton Skating Club. So welcome to both of you to the show. Thank you for being here.
So good to see you.
Thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to start it off. So, like I said at the top of the show, I think that between the four of us, we've probably got well over 100 years of coaching experience under our belt. So my first question, has a follow-up as well, but to both of you, how did you get involved in this? How did you fall into this? And with that being said, since you've been doing this for so many years, tell us something that you have just been so happy to have this opportunity to have this as your career. Dave, let's start with you.
Oh, well, I could go back to when I got off the boat in 1966. And my family, we were living in Toronto. And of course, that was the year of the Maple Leafs' last Stanley Cup win. And my father, we were immigrants, and my father thought, oh, there's something going on here with the hockey. So he put me in hockey. Well, I sucked. I couldn't skate. So the following year, he decided, because he saw the figure skaters that were on before or after us, that we should figure skate. Not something I really endorsed as a 7-year-old, but that kind of put me on a pathway to skating. Being in skating and growing up and going to school was never really my intent to be a coach. I was going to university. I was doing chemical engineering. I was doing other things. And I was actually judging because I was earmarked to be a high performance judge for Skate Canada, or the CFSA back then. And I was at sectionals in Orangeville, and a fellow judge from Barrie, Suzanne Morgan, said, "Hey, we need a partner for our test day. Can you come up?" And that was kind of the beginning of the end of my judging. And then I started coaching.
Wow.
But it all started, and you have to understand, my father, who was Pakistani and then went to England, met my mom in England, and then we came to Canada. Like, hockey and figure skating were nothing on his radar. He was an immigrant, and he was looking to be a part of the Canadian culture. And here I am. If he hadn't made that choice, if the Leafs had not won the Stanley Cup in 1967, I wouldn't be here today.
See, it's all about that. Oh my God!
And I'm still waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Begs the question. Can I just ask a question, David? You arrived, and then there hasn't been a Stanley Cup since. Correlation? I'm not sure.
It's on me.
Oh my gosh! And Colleen, tell us your story.
Well, my story isn't as colorful as that. Um, you know what? Honestly, I didn't put a pair of skates on until I think I was 11 years old. And basically, my cousin was going for skating lessons, and my parents said, "You should too. We live in Canada. Everyone should know how to skate." So I didn't take my first private lesson until I think I was 12. My sister, my brother, and my other sister, my younger sister, 12 years younger than me, came along. And my career was a whole 5 years, maybe. And theirs lasted much longer. My youngest sister, obviously, was the longest. She started when she was 3. Um, I ended up skating all through high school. And then through high school, I thought I was going to get into marketing or advertising. I wanted to go into business. But, you know, back in the day, you met with your guidance counselor and filled
Oh,
out
yeah.
those lovely questionnaires that showed you where you fit best. And through all of that, the coaching course at Seneca had just opened, I think the year before. And that's where I ended up going, met some of my best friends, continued skating a little bit through that. And I have been in coaching ever since. So, pretty boring story compared to some, but that's how I ended up there.
Not
No,
at
no
all. Not
story is
boring even
boring.
a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I think so. You know what? That was an amazing program, actually.
Yeah.
Back in its day, that was a really amazing program. And that's actually kind of almost a follow up into my next question about coaching courses and what we learn in school in our coaching courses, and then what we actually learn on the ice, and then what we learn actually talking to other skating coaches. Because I can only speak from personal experience that as I appreciated all of the national coaching, certification program courses that I took, at the same time, there was nothing more valuable than just talking to other coaches that have been doing this for longer periods of time than I have at the beginning. And that being said, I feel like we almost always had that person in our corner, that mentor. And I'm just wondering, Colleen, was there anybody that you thought, was just that person for you?
Oh, 100%. And you know exactly who it was. It was my coach. She and our family have so many very quirky connections, but in truth, she is a woman that many, many, many times I found myself in situations and I thought, how would she handle it? And honestly, I found my way through many situations, not just at the rink, through coaching, obviously, but in many personal things. And she still is in my life. Um, yeah, I I guess my biggest moment in coaching would be if ever anyone could say that I emulated her, for sure. Yeah.
Who was that, Colleen?
Pat to Oakhurst.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
Strong, strong, strong lady.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how about you,
Absolutely. And
David?
Dave?
Uh, well, as I expressed earlier, I just kind of fell into the coaching, and I was just partnering dances, mainly up here in Barrie at the Barrie Skating Club, and at Mariposa. And I think it was after the Olympics in 1988, which I did not uh, have anyone there. I was just a dance partner at the time. Doug Lee, who was the founder and owner and operator of the Mariposa School of Skating, pulled me into his office and he looked at me and he said, "I want this to be more than just a single center." And we had a brief conversation. Um, and that was the beginning of it for me. I had the support. I obviously had the infrastructure with a skating school like Mariposa at my fingertips, and that was the beginning of it for me as far as having the opportunity. Doug really provided me with that opportunity, and someone like Greg Miles, who was the head coach of the Barrie Skating Club, was very supportive as well. So professionally, that was it. But I drew upon a lot of coaches that I had, much like Colleen with Pat, and I took for many years from Ken and Paul at Ormsby, and they were just they're still important in my life. They at the time they were coaches in Scarborough, and then I moved on to the Ice Dance Center, and I was exposed to some wonderful people there, like Mary Jane Stong, and our rest in peace Bernie Ford, who taught me a lot about how to get through a lesson with humor and grace, and still get the point across, and was a genius when it came to phrasing and choreography. And when I started choreographing my own programs early in my career, I really leaned on a lot of those skills that Bernie had tried to get me to do as an athlete.
I think that for the most part, that kind of is, again, this is a whole conversation, and this is what the show is all about. But there was a time in skating where skaters had one coach that did it all. That coach was was your technician. That coach was your choreographer. That coach was your music editor. That coach was the person that told you which competitions you were going to enter. That coach did it all. And then I know, for myself, speaking for myself, kind of growing up in the 80s, under the Preston Skating School, I was then introduced to team coaching. And so that really just wasn't seen a lot of back then. And then all of a sudden, we now come to today, and it's almost a must. It's almost a need be, isn't it? Because you can't do everything on your own, right? I mean, we see these skating coaches, these amazing skating coaches in the kiss and cry with their students. But we as skating coaches know that, it wasn't only that person that helped to get that athlete up to that level and to that event. We know that there was, many other people to be recognized under that. And, what do you think of this whole team coaching idea and the realization that it's just so difficult to try to do it on your own?
Colleen, did you want to start?
Sure, I can, because I'm not sure, David, if you're aware, and I imagine PJ is aware, and I'm not sure if any of the viewers are aware. Milton has changed its structure this year in a very large way. We now, all coaches work together as a team. We have no base coaches. So every single skater from every level in our club has the benefit of the expertise of everyone, be it a jump expert, a spin expert, turns, choreography, you name it. So for me, when I base coached, and Mazin, you were in the same boat, it was very difficult to create a team environment because, you couldn't bring a coach in to help with a busy session and then ask them to sit for an hour and then be busy again, depending on where your numbers on each session were. This year, we are harmonious. We work together. And I think from a provincial level, every single one of those skaters I've seen major improvement, both in their skills, their jumps, their skills, their
Choreography.
Their choreography, their results at competitions, but they also seem happier. And everyone on those provincial sessions, they all seem to support each other. You no longer have those, I'll just call them cliques for lack of a better word, where, this base coach's students all hang out and this base coaches all hang out. They're more of a nice group. And I feel a lot of, I don't know whether pressure taken away is the right phrasing to use, but I would never go back to base coaching again. Now that's to an extreme. I understand there's also smaller team coaches, coaching atmospheres, but for Milton, I think this is an amazing change.
Yeah, my experience, to pick up on what Mazin's experience going to Preston, when I went to the Ice Dance Center just a few short years ago, my partner and I, we were assigned a base coach, and that was a foreign concept to me. But John Briscoe was our base coach, but we worked with Bernie. He would choreograph our programs. We worked with Mary Jane and other coaches that were there. And actually, I think my last year that I was there, it was Carol Lane's first year as a coach in Canada. Anyway, that was my first exposure to it. And then when I started working at Mariposa back in the heyday of that school, and it was late in the '80s and early in the '90s, everything went through Doug. He was it, and Neil Carpenter, and Neil they would be their own base coaches, but they would also work together, and that's currently a model that we've revisited at Mariposa, where we have a couple of, if you want to call them base coaches, like a Janice Morgan or a Michael Hopfus, but they work with each other's students. So really what the base coach means is someone's got to be responsible to make sure that the music is edited correctly, that events are done. Like back when I was running the dance program at the beginning of my career at Mariposa, I was it. And I did everything. I did the choreography. I talked to the parents. I did it all. And it was really a number of years before I was able to get the program to a spot where I could build a team to support me and the skaters within the program. And the beauty of it is as dancers, there was work to be had in the singles and pairs programs that happened at Mariposa as well. So a little different than I'm really curious about what's happening in Milton there, Colleen. It sounds really interesting, but we still have that base coach model, but they work like that. You can have a number of base coaches, but they work together. So I don't know what's the best of both worlds, but that's what we do.
Yeah,
Diana Flynn has a great comment just before you go on, Mazin. So unless you had the privilege, hey, Diana, of Ozzie Colson of the Banff School of Fine Arts, who was doing team coaching in the 1960s. Absolutely true. Just wanted to bring that in. Sorry to interrupt. And Mark Hadley, another one who knows, they know it all, those two. They're exactly right.
If I can interject, because I wanted to pick up on something, but first of all, hello, Diana. And Ozzie Colson was actually one of my early coaches, and we could be here for hours, me telling stories. But I just wanted to pick up on your preamble because, PJ, you had mentioned remembering me as a competitor, and you referenced your mother, dear sweet Grace Elliott. Well, she wasn't always dear and sweet as a judge. But I tell you, when I was on the ice and I looked up at that
Or
panel,
a mom.
Oh.
Kidding, Mom, just kidding.
But when I looked up at that panel, I always sought out Grace's face because she would have the biggest smile, and it was just like, right, as a competitor, hers was one of the faces I would search out for.
She was
That
very
was it.
kind
I
to the
just wanted to
skaters.
comment on that.
Yep. And I think lots of judges and evaluators today are doing the same thing. But I'll tell you one story. Debbie Lee, who's a dance coach as well, she would have young skaters saying, I think that judge likes me. Debbie would say, she looks like that for everybody.
Yeah.
You know what? It's people like that keep us, Grace, God love her, that keep us in the sport, right? I mean, because this sport can be really tough. And as a young kid, as a young athlete, sometimes you were the best practice skater, but not necessarily the best competitor. And, your coach saw something within you that just put away all of the negativity aside. And I know for myself as a coach, I'm always asking the kids, but what do you love about skating? What do you love about skating? And I think that for the most part, what I just love about skating is what it can do for you. Not what it can't do for you, but what it can do for you. And so for me, it's always been the glass is half full. But I have to ask you, Dave, about your thoughts that ice dancing and rules within our sport, okay, to both of you. We're going to get to it all, but rules within our sport are forever changing, season after season, and sometimes even mid-season. And I can only speak for myself, that level of frustration where all of a sudden you are able to work on an element with either a team or an athlete, and the next thing you know, you find out, yeah, that's not it anymore. now it's going to be something else. And this last, couple of seasons or what have you, please forgive me if I'm incorrect on this, but, in senior dance, the pattern portion of the short dance has been eliminated, and now it's now called the rhythm dance. I want to get your take on that. What do you think of it? Pro, con?
I'm I'm really torn with this. The original dance or the short dance or the OSP, the original pattern dance, all the machinations it's gone through since I've been coaching. Um, we no longer have compulsory dances, and I know that they're a great development tool, and do you need them at senior? But I also know that the skating fan, and not necessarily the hardcore dance fan, but just a skating fan, or even general public that likes sports, the having an embedded pattern dance in a rhythm dance, and which is still the case in junior, but not so much in senior, gave the audience apples to compare with apples. And
Yeah.
you don't get that anymore, because a sports fan, like they may not be experts, but they can appreciate certain things if you lay it out for them. And watching rumbas going down the ice at a world championship, you can tell if you watch enough. Oh, that's really deep. And dancing is dancing. When people are like, you can go to a bar and you can pick out that guy that has no rhythm dancing on the dance floor. Like, I mean, you can tell when something's on time or not off time. So I get really frustrated because I feel in ice dance in particular, no longer the new system has really had an impact in trying to make ice dance more objective. And in that regard, I think it's been great and very successful. But I feel like they're trying to reinvent the wheel every year, and they never let things just sort of sit and go. And probably my best example was a few years ago. I was at probably about the third or fourth Junior Grand Prix. Might have been in Poland. Doesn't matter where we were. And there was a communique that came from the ISU giving us more clarification on the slide steps, which was a key point in that dance. And what it was supposed to be and what it wasn't supposed to be, and how to do it correctly and whatnot. So this is like middle of the Junior Grand Prix season, and there have been 3 events already, and we're getting clarifications. What is going on? And I can remember, I'll mention Carol Lane again. She kind of lost, and I said, I cannot believe the amount of time and money we have spent on steps that are done on 2 feet on flats.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I think, it's one of those things where it has been discussed with high-level athletes, Olympic and world level athletes, and that question is, maybe the ISU should actually hold on to rules for a quadrennial, time period, so that we can actually compare apples to apples for those 4 years. And then if they want to make changes to some of those rules, then you know what? Every 4 years, make those changes. Because
exactly.
Otherwise, we're seeing different things all the time.
It's always that, and it's necessary to make tweaks every once in a while, but let coaches and choreographers get a grip.
Yeah.
Right. And it takes more than 1 year, one cycle, to really find the niche, especially if there have been like a lot of changes, seismic changes to one discipline. In senior, the pattern, the PST as they call it, I have no idea. And I can remember sitting with members over the years of the International Dance Technical Committee saying, like, what are you thinking? You're ruining this for the viewing public. At the end of the day, we're a sport and we want fans and we want people to talk about our sport in a positive light. And if you can't make a comparison, then why? You're making it a mystery. You're making it a mystery. And in a mystery, if no one's getting it, then why are you watching it?
Yeah, I'm with you. You're preaching to the choir here, my friend. Mazin, have you got another question for
I
Colleen?
do, yeah, for Colleen. So, this business of change and everlasting change. So, under our provincial system, these skaters have to earn the highest score out of, let's just say, the top 18 within the province, the top 24, 36, whatever it is. And that being said, there's all these different events that are going on. So, how do you strategize for that to try to get these young skaters to be able to, to do their best to be able to make it to provincials?
Right. Well, the first thing that we have to remember is in our club, many of these provincial skaters are skating just under 3 hours a week. On top of that, they're doing skills, they're doing dance testing, and a number of them have now started doing artistic testing and competing. So it's a lot to balance in 2 hours and 50 minutes. So what I do is the beginning of the season, thank goodness we get the outlay of all the competitions. I basically choose one each month, one November, December, January, February. Provincials is March. And more than one a month isn't feasible, is not going to happen. And then what we do, we have an outlay. The kids know the beginning of the season, which month they have competitions, the dates of the competitions. And then we don't put a big emphasis on provincials, to be quite honest. We just try to each week set our goals and improve our solos. We have strategies, if you even call them strategies. I think it's just pretty natural and normal. When we run our solos each night, we have a focus for that night. It might be levels and spins, or just achieving each basic position in those spins. Another night it will be getting full rotations in jumps. Another night it may be projection or the transitions. And then we work that up to clean programs. We keep the risk elements to a minimum. And then as we get cleaner programs, we add. We will also, sorry. Sorry. We will also, I know. Colds are going through my house, so I'm just hoping that I'm not getting it. But anyway, we won't go there. Positive. The other thing we do is we have solo trackers. So each night they run a solo. We track the elements. We whoever's watching solos tracks them, provides great feedback for the kids, and it also provides us a very clear line of what's working and what's not, what we need to change. It's just all very regimented, and I try to keep it really scheduled that way. And the other thing that we do is I provide in November a little self-motivational game called the Amazing Skate Race Ontario. And I'll pick maybe 10 locations in Ontario on a map that I print. And a clean skate allows you to move from town to town or city to city location. And your last location is wherever provincials are being held that year. And your goal is to try to make it around Ontario by provincial time. It just adds a little motivation to skate clean, but you're not pitted against everybody else. It's kind of like what qualifying for provincials is. You just
Right.
go, you do your best, try to keep improving it. Each competition, we review report cards and pencil out what could be better, where could we change, how could we get more marks, and then you let what will be. And if you
That's
get to
great.
provincials, then yay. And if you don't, well, then we've put out our best effort, and the sun will still come up tomorrow, and your parents aren't going to kick you out of the house or make you run home behind the car, and it's still all good. You're not going
Maybe
to.
they will.
Well, there are some that you wonder, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think, I don't focus a lot on getting to provincials because there are so many kids. And again, you speak of the changes. Every year, it seems like it's a different amount they're taking. Even this year, we had a set amount they were taking, and then they added spots. So, you just, and I think there's a lot more that I'm trying to teach them, because the one thing that I'm finding with kids these days is there's no resilience. There's no, when they think they fail at something, it's the end of the world. And I'm trying to teach them that no, it's not. These are your great years. Your life is not dependent upon whether you get to provincials or whether you don't. If you do get there, it's a great reward for the success you've made. But at the end of the day, it's all good. If you don't get there, we'll move on. We'll start focusing for next season, and we'll have some fun. I don't know.
So
Well, I think that's
Colleen,
it.
Mazin, I was just going to say that Colleen brings up a good point about talking about resilience and what kids sort of are like today. So you should transition and invite our guests to stay in for On Thin Ice. Take it
Oh,
away, Mazin.
please. All right. Yes, On Thin Ice. Pete, are you reading
Or-
this or am I?
On thin ice.
No expense was spared. I hope you guys understand that. Oh,
Okay,
read it,
so
Ma-
folks, listen. On Thin Ice today, what is the most valuable lesson you learned about coaching that was well outside your certification and coaching courses? Colleen?
Well, there are a lot. Obviously, there are a lot. I mean, I've learned the lesson that I'm learning every single day. And every skater, every coach, even parents that cross my path, I'll learn something from them, whether it's that's great, I want to start implementing that, or whether it's, oh my gosh, I never want to come across like that person. So I need to watch what I'm doing. But I have to be really honest, is what I learned through COVID with what these skaters actually, how they mentally suffered, and what we saw in our, within our own club with after effects of COVID. And some of them are still going through it. And I've learned that some of it I'm not capable of helping. And my biggest job, or my biggest moment, had to be speaking with parents and finding extra help for some of these kids. Truthfully,
Yeah.
that's
Dave?
probably the biggest lesson I've learned. Maybe I look at it too much like a mom, that I've been called many times in our club as I'm kind of the mom coach. Maybe that's why, but certainly my lessons haven't come from getting kids to the highest level. It's coming from more personal sources, if that makes any sense.
Maz, can I go next?
Yeah.
Yay. Okay, two things. I learned the hard way that the more money a family makes, the less likely they are to pay me on time. Maybe that's just my experience. But that, honest to goodness, used to drive me crazy. The parents that budgeted and said you can have, 4 lessons for the month for little Tiffany. I love those people because they know exactly what they're going to do. The ones, but that I thought was a bit of a shock, because I always used to say when you go into the Metro grocery store, they expect you to pay when you leave. Apparently, in coaching, I cannot tell you the number of the number of parents, not that many percentage wise, but over the course of 30 years that I had to chase. So that was a bit of a revelation. And I also didn't realize the impact I would have on the young people who were coached by me. That was the privilege part of the job. I had lots of bratty teenagers down the road into adulthood. I even got the chance to teach children of bratty teenagers. And that was the privilege part, because there were more than a few teenagers who said to me, "You don't know the effect that you had on me. I was going through a really rough time, and the rink was a safe place." So, parents, pay your bills.
Yes, we
That
had a
was a
great
privilege.
comment from Diana Flynn again. There are a lot of little eyes on us when we're on the ice. And so coaches are role models, and we need to remember this.
Yeah.
Dave, what's your thoughts?
Absolutely. And thanks, Lynn. Yeah, Diana, perfect. We are role models. What we do and say is being observed by young people, and it matters.
Yeah,
David.
I think so. Yeah, Dave.
Well, I'm just going to echo what you said, PJ, and what Diana had written down. Early in my competitive career, I'm starting to have some competitive skaters. So now you're spending more time with these kids, and I learned quickly, and I was very humbled by the power of my words, because a number of times I like to have I like to work. My mantra is work hard, have fun. So I would always like to have some fun. I remember talking to my team, and Debbie and I, we just started a family, and Debbie was still commuting to Toronto, and I made a joke with my group of dancers. I had about 3 dance teams about, oh yeah, I'm going to move to Toronto. Debbie's working down there. I got a family now, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. And 5 of the 6 kids were like, oh yeah, whatever, whatever, whatever. You're so funny, Dave. The one kid, she was from Collingwood, told her parents what Dave said. She was about 14, 15 years old, and totally missed the sarcasm. And for weeks they struggled. And I remember calling that family because we had to register for sectionals. And so we go through that process. And then the mother says, David, can I talk to you about something else? When are you and Debbie moving to Toronto? And I totally out of context because it was about weeks later. And I said, what are you talking about? Well, you said, and then it dawned on me. And I thought, oh, they're listening to what I'm saying. And that moment was so, it was humbling, and it was ground shifting. It was seismic. It was like, whoa, my words have power. It didn't really change how I coached, but it made me appreciate what I mean to these kids. Role modeling is huge, and your words have power. So choose wisely. And as Diana said, there are little eyes on you all the time. And I agree with you, PJ. Pay your bills.
Yeah.
I know it's cheeky, but you know what? I'm not coaching anymore, so nobody's going to stop taking lessons from me. Mark Hadley's got a great comment. Maz, can you see it, or do you want me to read it?
Go ahead, Peach.
I have learned to stand back and listen to the skater. At the end of today, we are creating good citizens and athletes. You know what, Mark? Bravo. That's exactly the right thing. What about you,
Yeah.
Maz? What about your lessons?
I think for the most part, I always try to keep something in mind that I chose this as a profession, and at the same time, someone chose to have me help their child. And I always consider that to be a privilege, not a right. And I always keep that in mind, in that, you know what, it's a privilege for that family, for that athlete, for that child to choose me to help them achieve their goals, whatever their goals are. Whatever their goals are. And with that being said, you know what? From the bottom of our hearts, guys, we thank you so much. We thank you so much for being involved in this show. I know there's so many other things that we could have touched on, but at the same time is of the essence, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with us and to talk with us about what we do for a living, coaching. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite, Mazin. PJ, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Thank
so
you.
good to see you.
All right.
For everybody else, we want to make sure that you follow our social media at Skate Ontario, just about everywhere that we are. Guess what, Mazin? There's only one show left for the season. It's next week, same bat station, same bat time. 3 Turn 3 returns for a best of episode. We don't know what it's going to look like just yet, but I'm sure our producer Richard will tell us. So
He'll tell.
for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.